You know, usually when you want to understand how something really complex works, you pick a highly specialized tool, right? Like if you want to understand the life cycle of a star, you grab a radio telescope.
Right.
If you want to map a cellular structure, you use an electron microscope.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're trying to understand the nature of the human soul, well, you close your eyes, you sit in silence and meditate. We just naturally compartmentalize our reality.
Yeah, we build these very distinct walls around our disciplines. We keep the physical, mathematically observable world in one box and the spiritual, philosophical world in a completely different box.
Exactly.
And blurring those lines is usually pretty frowned upon in both the scientific and theological communities.
Totally. But imagine trying to look through the telescope, the microscope, in your own spiritual lens, all at the exact same time. I mean, conventional wisdom says you just see a blurry, chaotic mess.
A total mess, yeah.
But today, we're looking at a text that claims if you do exactly that, if you just smash all those disciplines together, you don't get a blur. You actually get the legible blueprint of reality. So welcome to a very special deep dive designed entirely for you. Today, our mission is to explore this profoundly unique synthesis of philosophy and science translated from an essay by Zhu Feng. It's titled View of Life in Lifechanyuan.
And it is an incredibly ambitious piece of writing. I mean, the text attempts to answer the ultimate age-old question, what is the essence of life?
Yeah.
And it does this by forcefully weaving together the foundational doctrines of the world's major religions, the bleeding edge of quantum physics, and deep personal meditation. It really leaves almost no stone unturned.
It really doesn't. Now, just a quick note for you listening before we jump in. This text touches on very specific religious doctrines and makes some incredibly bold, unorthodox interpretations of theoretical physics. So our job here is not to endorse these specific spiritual claims, and we aren't here to verify the physical theories as peer-reviewed science either. Our goal is to impartially map out this fascinating intellectual journey for you so you can see how the author connects these seemingly impossible dots. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right. So to understand the final destination, we really have to start where the author starts, and it begins in a place that is deeply, painfully human.
Yeah, very relatable.
Exactly. The author describes being beaten down by just the sheer friction of life. He talks about facing the overwhelming grind of daily existence, that sort of modern burnout, and finally stopping to ask the void, why am I here? What is the actual function of my life?
And he makes this incredibly raw point that living without knowing the meaning of life is functionally no better than dying. Like, you're just a biological machine burning calories, you know?
Yeah, just going through the motions.
Right. But then he hits this brutal existential catch-22. He reasons that if he just gives up and dies, well, what if those ancient stories about heaven, hell, or karma are actually true?
Right. That makes dying without figuring the rules out first a massive risk. You don't want to die for nothing, or worse, end up in some terrible afterlife simply because you didn't do the homework while you were alive.
Yeah, it's a profound trap. Like, you can't bear to live without meaning, but you can't afford to die without it either. So to solve it, the author just goes on this relentless quest for the ultimate source and destination of life. And his initial reading list is staggering.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah. He dives into Buddhist scriptures, the Bible, the Quran, the Tao Te Ching, and even the philosophical channelings of Seth. But theology alone leaves his search completely unfulfilled.
Yeah, the answers feel too allegorical for him, like they lack a structural mechanism.
Exactly. So he pivots entirely. He goes hard into the hard sciences. He reads up on Newtonian physics, Einstein's special and general relativity, quantum mechanics, superstring theory, cosmological holography, unified field theories, and even Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time.
And the result of absorbing all that, the greatest spiritual texts and the greatest scientific minds in human history, is complete and utter confusion.
Complete confusion.
He is left entirely lost in a sea of contradictory axioms.
It's like you're trying to assemble a massive piece of furniture in your living room, and you've got a manual from a religion box and a completely different manual from a quantum physics box.
Right.
And not only do the instructions contradict each other, but absolutely none of the parts even seem to belong to the same universe. So where do you even go when both the highest spiritual authorities and the most brilliant scientific minds leave you stranded?
Well, when the textbooks fail, you have to start with first principles. You have to strip away everything you've read and just look at the physical evidence right in front of you.
Okay, so how does he do that?
He does this by asking a remarkably simple biological question. Why is the human body symmetrical? Why do we have a left side and a right side that mirror each other? He assumes that the answer to this macro-level symmetry must be encoded in the original life factor, like the absolute foundational building block of our existence.
So if you want to find the blueprint, you have to look at the bricks.
Exactly. So he starts zooming in. He moves from the symmetry of the human body down to molecules, then down to atoms. Inside the atoms, he looks at protons, neutrons, and electrons.
Right, basic high school chemistry stuff.
Yeah, but classical atomic structure doesn't explain the bilateral symmetry of a living biological organism.
Wow.
So he has to go deeper. He pierces the atomic veil into the realm of subparticles.
Okay, so he ventures into the subparticle space, specifically examining quarks,
Right.
which were famously named by the physicist Murray Gell-Mann. But almost immediately, she runs into the boundaries of human observation. He references Nobel Prize winner Tsung-Dao Lee, who pointed out that whether quarks even exist in the physical way we conceptualize them is still a mystery.
Yeah, because we are operating at a scale so small that our best particle accelerators and synchrotron radiation devices can't even see this submicroscopic world. We really just see the mathematical shadows they cast.
Right, so the author basically says, well, let's assume quarks exist and look at the mathematical behavior of these elementary particles. And this is where we have to talk about wave-particle duality and the incredibly bizarre concept of particle spin.
Yes, because he thinks spin holds the secret to symmetry.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. So in quantum mechanics, particles possess an intrinsic form of angular momentum called spin. But they don't have a physical axis of rotation like a spinning top.
Right, it's not actually spinning.
Exactly. It's a purely mathematical property describing how the particle's wave function behaves under rotation. The math shows that some particles, like the Higgs boson, look the same from any direction. That's a spin of 0.
Okay.
Some have to turn a full 360 degrees to look the same. Some only need to turn 180 degrees. And then there are fermions, like electrons and quarks, that have to rotate 720 degrees. Yeah, they have to complete 2 full circles just to return to their original quantum state.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Wait, how does knowing a subatomic particle needs to mathematically spin 720 degrees to look the same actually help us understand why my left and right hands match?
It's a leap, for sure.
Yeah, or why I feel sad, or why I want to be a good person. It just feels like the author is searching for the soul inside an equation that describes spatial rotation.
Well, the author hopes that these fundamental laws of symmetry at the quantum level scale up to dictate biological and even spiritual symmetry. He layers in the Pauli exclusion principle, which dictates that 2 identical fermions cannot occupy the same quantum state simultaneously.
And this principle is literally what gives matter its rigid structure, right? It's why you don't just fall through the floor.
Exactly. He then brings in Paul Dirac's theoretical leap, which stated that the equations of quantum mechanics require every electron to have a mate with an opposite charge, an anti-electron or positron. Every fundamental particle must have an antiparticle.
Which is the ultimate form of symmetry, right?
Yes.
The existence of antimatter balancing out matter. I mean, this even led Stephen Hawking to theorize the mathematical possibility of entire anti-worlds and anti-humans composed of these antiparticles.
This raises an important question. If these theories of particle annihilation and perfect matter-antimatter symmetry bring us to the very edge of physical balance, does it actually explain a living, breathing, conscious human being?
I'm guessing no.
Right. The author realizes it does not. A positron doesn't have morality or a soul or a purpose. It just has an opposite electrical charge. Quantum symmetry gives us the physical scaffolding, but it completely fails to identify the animating force, the real person inside the structure.
So the particles as physical dots are basically a dead end for finding the meaning of life.
Yeah, pretty much.
So the text abandons the dots and moves to superstring theory and M theory. And this feels like the first major paradigm shift in his journey. It suggests that elementary particles aren't tiny zero-dimensional points at all. They are one-dimensional vibrating strings of energy.
Right. Instead of conceptualizing the universe as a bucket of microscopic marbles constantly colliding, string theory asks you to view it as a cosmic instrument.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, all the different particles in nature, quarks, electrons, photons, there are just different vibrational modes, different notes being played on these fundamental strings. The harmony of these vibrations creates what we perceive as solid matter.
It's a beautiful concept, but the author points out its fatal flaw for his mission. Even string theory, with all its elegant multidimensional math, cannot solve the unification of the four fundamental forces of nature: gravity, electromagnetism, the weak nuclear force, and the strong nuclear force.
Exactly. The math still breaks down when trying to unite the macrogravity of stars with the microworld of quantum strings.
Okay, so since string theory still leaves the universe mathematically fragmented, the author has to search for a completely different framework.
And this is where the text introduces cosmic holography. That existence isn't just made of two states, matter, which encompasses mass and energy and motion.
Okay.
It introduces a third, equally fundamental state, thought.
Wait, when you say thought, you mean literal consciousness,
Yeah.
right? Not just an electrical firing in the human brain, but like a structural property of the universe itself.
Yes, exactly. It's also referred to in the text as thought energy. The theory claims that thinking is a fundamental cosmic phenomenon. It is just as real and just as structural to the fabric of reality as a rock or a beam of light.
Wow.
The text argues that recognizing thought as a primary energy state is the moment humanity finally breaks through the conceptual bondage of pure materialism.
And the details he pulls from this are mind-blowing. He claims that black holes aren't just super dense clumps of dead mass with infinite gravity. They're actually massive, gargantuan bodies of consciousness.
Right.
He argues that space, time, and psychology can literally convert into one another. Like if space and time were just constructs of the observer, then the observer's psychology, their thought energy, is the variable that dictates physical reality. The very cores of subatomic particles are made of this thought energy.
It is a radical departure from classical deterministic physics. It essentially states that the universe is not a dead environment where life accidentally evolved. Instead, the universe is a holographic unity driven by intentional foundational consciousness.
So the universe isn't a cold, dead machine made of billiard balls bouncing into each other.
Yeah.
According to this view, it's more like a grand symphony where a black hole is basically a giant cosmic mind.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
But even with this beautiful unified idea, he still hits another brick wall, doesn't he? The wall of first causes.
He does. Because even if you accept that thought is a fundamental energy that shapes a holographic universe, you still have to explain the first cause. Like, how did the mechanism actually begin? Isaac Newton couldn't explain the first driving force of the universe with his laws of gravity, so he just attributed it to the greatest creator. Albert Einstein spent the entire latter half of his life trying to establish a unified field theory to explain this, hoping to mathematically unify gravity and electromagnetism into one elegant equation.
And he failed.
And he failed.
The unified field theory tries to explain the absolute root mechanics of things like celestial spin. The text talks about how tangential gravitational forces create a rotating torque, basically pulling things in space so they start spinning on an axis.
Yeah.
But the author realizes that knowing the math of why a planet spins does not explain how life originated, and it certainly doesn't explain the human condition, like why we possess an innate sense of morality or good and evil.
Exactly. And to explain why even the greatest physicists in history fail to find the first cause through math, the author brings in Gödel's incompleteness theorem.
Oh, man. If I remember correctly, this is the theorem that fundamentally breaks mathematics from the inside out.
It really does. Kurt Gödel was a brilliant logician who proved that within any sufficiently complex formal logical system, like the mathematics used to describe quantum mechanics, there will always be statements that are demonstrably true, but absolutely unprovable within the axioms of that system.
Meaning a mathematical system cannot prove its own consistency.
Yes.
So it's like if you build a box out of math, you can't use the map inside the box to prove the box exists.
Exactly the issue. And applied to theoretical physics, it means that a unified field theory, a single mathematical framework meant to explain the entire universe, might be physically impossible to complete. The universe's fundamental equations cannot be self-proving.
Wow.
Because of this inherent mathematical limitation built into the fabric of logic itself, the text notes that Stephen Hawking eventually gave up on finding a perfectly complete unified field theory. Science, the author says, temporarily stopped here.
So, if Stephen Hawking literally threw his hands up in defeat because of a mathematical paradox, how does our author possibly move forward? Like, how do you bypass the point where the smartest physicist in the world concedes defeat?
Well, by refusing to rely on external mathematical systems and instead changing his methodology to something internal.
Okay.
The author channels Pierre-Simon Laplace, a famous French scholar. Laplace proposed a thought experiment often called Laplace's demon. He said, imagine an intellect that knew the exact position and momentum of every single atom in the universe right now and understood all the forces acting upon them.
Right, so for an intellect that vast, analyzing all that data instantly, the future wouldn't be a mystery at all. It would be just as clear and inevitable as the past, because everything is just one giant, unbroken chain of cause and effect.
The author essentially asks, can I tap into that intellect? Since religious theology and quantum physics equations couldn't get him there, he decides to use his own consciousness as the laboratory.
Okay, going inward.
Yeah. He leans back into that cosmic holography theory, the idea that thought is a hyperspace energy capable of connecting with the outside world. He begins practicing intense self-refinement and meditation.
He literally lies in his bed,
Yeah.
focuses his thought energy, and consciously dispatches his mind out into the universe to see what he can connect with. And what follows is a pretty profound epiphany.
He describes a sudden influx of wisdom, seemingly channeled from three massive historical figures, which he interprets not as religious dogmas, but as verifiable energetic truths.
Who are they?
First, Jesus Christ, imparting the lesson that pure true faith has the literal physical power to plant a tree in the sea, meaning focused thought energy, can manipulate physical matter.
Okay.
Then, Lao Tzu, teaching that the Tao, the way of the universe, is elusive and invisible, yet it harbors the true, verifiable essence of all energy. And finally, Buddha, who tells him that everything with physical form is ultimately unreal and transient.
And this intense meditative state unlocks what the author calls holographic order. He realizes that the universe is not governed by chaos or random quantum fluctuations, but by a deeply connected, inevitable order where the whole is contained within every single part.
What's fascinating here is the incredibly mundane, everyday example he uses to explain this grand cosmic concept.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
He asks, if you scold someone yesterday and a bird poops on your head today, is there an inevitable connection between those two events?
See, I have to push back here.
Mhm.
Classical physics, and frankly just common sense, would say you just had a really bad couple of days. There is absolutely no physical mechanism connecting your vocal cords, yelling at someone, and the digestive tract of a bird 24 hours later.
Right. Under a strictly materialist view, you are correct. It's just random chance. But under holographic order, where thought is a fundamental structural energy, there is a direct causal fluid dynamics at play.
Okay.
Well, when you throw negative thought energy out, like scolding someone, you perturb the holographic field of the universe. Because every part of the hologram is connected to the whole, the universe inevitably resolves that perturbation by reflecting a matching frequency of energy back at you.
So the bird is just the physical vehicle for the energetic feedback loop.
Exactly. Once you step into that awareness, the invisible threads connecting every action and reaction become obvious.
Which brings us to the grand finale of this deep dive. The author finally synthesizes all of this, the limitations of quarks, the holographic thought fields, the meditative epiphanies, into a concrete definition of what life actually is.
Yeah, he cites Dr. Christopher Langton from the Los Alamos National Laboratory, who famously stated, "The essence of life lies not in its substance, but in its form."
Form over substance.
Exactly. Taking inspiration from that distinction between physical substance and informational form, the author lays out his final tenets. He defines life fundamentally as a non-material structure that possesses spirituality. He states that mathematically, in a holographic universe, life operates on the principle that 1 + 1 = 1.
Which sounds completely illogical at first glance.
Totally.
But if you view it through the lens of holographic order, it starts to make sense. He's saying that the physical hardware, your body, is a 1. And the software, your non-material spiritual structure, your thought energy, is a 1. But they don't combine to make two separate things interacting. They form a single, inseparable, perfect unity.
The form and the energy are one. He asserts that the greatest creator is a foundational architect but does not actively micromanage or dominate our daily lives.
Right.
He claims that reincarnation or transmigration happens instantaneously. There's no waiting room, no purgatory, no process in between lifetimes.
Just boom, next life.
Boom. Furthermore, he states that the major religions are entirely wrong about doomsday. There is no catastrophic end of days for life, and physical death is absolutely not the final stop.
So what does this all mean? How does instantaneous reincarnation actually work without breaking the laws of physics or the speed of light?
It's a great question.
To explain the mechanics of this, he uses a brilliant modern metaphor. He says the process of life is like writing a fax. life can be faxed.
It is a striking analogy that perfectly explains the mechanism of transmigration as the transfer of data rather than physical matter.
Think about that. It's like your physical body is just the blank piece of paper sitting in the tray of the machine. The paper itself isn't the message, it's just the temporary medium. Your actual life is the data, the non-material structure, the complex signature of your thought energy.
Right.
When you die, that data doesn't have to physically travel across the universe through space and time. It simply transmits instantly, materializing wherever a receiving machine, a new physical form, is ready. And the nature of that transmission is governed strictly by the holographic feedback loop. What goes around comes around. Like if you fax out a life of scolding, the universe prints you out a life of bird poop. As you sow, so shall you reap, enforced by cosmic data transfer.
It perfectly bridges his earlier points. It explains why discovering the physical symmetry of subatomic particles wasn't enough to define a human.
Yeah.
And why instantaneous transmission of consciousness doesn't violate the speed of light, because in a holographic universe, the information is already everywhere at once.
Fascinating.
For the listener wanting to explore the deeper esoteric mechanics of this soul data, the author notes that the intricate details are housed in the Chinese soul chapter of his broader work, Lifechanyuan.
It is an incredible intellectual journey. To zoom out for you listening, we started with one person having a really tough time, frustrated with the burnout of the daily grind, asking the void why he's even here. And that deeply relatable frustration sparked a massive odyssey.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, he dragged us down through the microscopic world of quarks and quantum spin, revealing the limits of materialism.
Right.
He pushed us out into the cosmos with superstrings and black holes made of pure consciousness, and finally into a meditative state that bypassed mathematical incompleteness to redefine reality itself.
He essentially bridged the cold, intimidating mathematical paradoxes of quantum physics with the most intimate, everyday human quest for meaning. Like, he took the telescope, the microscope, and the spiritual lens, taped them all together, and saw a universe where life is an instantly transmittable, non-material structure, governed by a highly logical cosmic system of karma.
It forces us to fundamentally reconsider the weight of our own existence.
Yeah.
I mean, if matter, motion, and thought are the three equal states of the universe, then we are not merely passive biological observers trapped in a mechanical world.
No.
We are active structural participants in a holographic one.
And that leads us to one final lingering thought for you to chew on as you go about the rest of your day. Based strictly on the logic of this source, if the universe operates on a holographic order, where the core of every single particle is literally made of thought energy, and space, time, and human psychology are entirely interchangeable and fluid,
Yeah.
does that mean every single private, fleeting thought you have is literally physically altering the fundamental structure of the universe around you right this very second? If looking through all the lenses at once shows us a universe built entirely of thought, what are you building with yours?